the fool. Nobody did see. Or maybe, just maybe, the trooper was me or you. Oh yeah. Yes, it will. Who was the Stormtrooper? Who could it be? Nobody knows. It's still a mystery. Nobody knows. It's a mystery.
Hello, and welcome to the Cantina Chatter Podcast. My name is Victoria, and I will be your guide on this adventure through toys, collectibles, and film discussion. In this episode, my Star Wars Actors Conversation series continues. If you've ever seen the original Star Wars film, then you've seen British actor and musician Laurie Goode on screen. In fact, Laurie portrayed 3 different characters in the original film. One of the 2 Sauron aliens seen in the Mos Eisley Cantina, a rebel pilot in the Death Star briefing scene, and a Stormtrooper who appeared on screen in at least 2 different sequences. First at the beginning during the Imperial attack on the rebel blockade runner, and again on the Death Star in pursuit of our rebel heroes. And as someone who featured in 3 different roles in the original film, I'll bet he's got some interesting stories to tell. In last week's episode, I was joined by Britt Schatz, marketing manager of the Mattel Jurassic World toy line. With the Mattel Jurassic toy line being the multi-generational smash hit it has been with so many collectors, fans, and families, I was thrilled to have her on the show to discuss the line at great length. We discussed its development, its wide range of diverse product, distribution, quality control, design decisions, and the future. It was a fun conversation, and even if you're not a Jurassic World toy collector, you'll no doubt hear some interesting things regarding the production of a major toy line. If you haven't heard it already, I hope you'll give it a listen. All right, Laurie Goode, welcome to the Cantina.
Hello, Victoria's Cantina.
If you take a look around, does it look more or less as you remember it?
Strangely enough, I did a convention in Manchester about 3 years ago where they had a replica of the cantina. Mm-hmm. And if you go on the video that I did for Who Was a Stormtrooper Banged His Head, you'll see the cantina sequence in that video, which is the replica.
Oh.
That was about 3 years ago. But when you're talking about 1976, can I remember every kind of nook and cranny? No, I can't.
Oh, of course.
But basically, I think the actual studio that was in is now part of Tesco's Supermarket.
Oh, wow.
I mean, the studio itself is still there, but the actual stage that it was on no longer exists, which is a shame.
So you said that area is now in a supermarket?
Yeah, they sold half of it off to the supermarket because, when times have changed since the 70s and people started using natural locations for their films and films got cheaper, so they didn't hire the studios anymore.
Tesco Supermarket. I'll have to make a note of that. That way when I visit, I can go look for it.
Yeah. Well, it's the car park area. I mean, it just sort of verges onto it. I don't know. I can't remember how long it was, but if you look for original photographs of Elstree Studios, there is one online which has a long front, when you're looking from the road. Mm-hmm. And I think if you'll find like the recent changes, I think that encroaches onto that, onto that building. So that half of that building has been knocked down. So I do believe that the stage that we did that cantina sequence in is now part of Tesco's car park.
Oh, wow. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So I would just say stay away from that man over there, that old man with the lightsaber. I hear that he's good at cutting off arms.
Yeah. Yes.
Very dangerous. So, Laurie, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Like our mutual friend, Jamie Stingroom, I've tried to connect with various Star Wars actors in order to document their story. Last year I had Pam Rose. Also had Angela Staines, who was one of the Tonnika sisters. And I think that the Star Wars films are the result of a lot of hard work by so many people. Of course, you have George Lucas, and then you have the names of everyone else that you know. James Earl Jones, David Prowse, Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher. But then you have so many more people behind the scenes and many people in minor and background roles that really help to flesh out this Star Wars universe. And I think there's a lot of value in listening to what those people have to say. So again, I'm grateful to be able to chat with someone who actually portrayed 3 different characters in the film.
Yes. In actual fact, I think I played 4 characters, in fact, because I was a rebel trooper. I've noticed myself as a rebel trooper in one of the still photographs in a book that someone showed me. But, there was so much work in those days, you kind of forget what you actually did on the film. Because you went along and you sort of like, right, today I'm a Stormtrooper. And then the next day I was an X-Wing pilot. And, so it was very difficult to look back and to remember exactly what shots you did when you're in. But someone showed me a photograph and I thought, crikey, that's me, So, yes, but 3 definitely. 3 that I've been saying since I've been doing the conventions.
Wow, very cool. So I want to ask you, for those listening, Laurie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
I was born in Windsor, if that's any help. A place called Runnymede in a town called Egham. It's where they signed the Magna Carta. My parents came from the East End of London. They moved out there during the war because they got bombed out 3 times. Kept getting bombed out by the Germans. So when they came back home from work, the house wasn't there. So eventually they got fed up with being bombed out. So they moved out of London. And I didn't really have any kind of intentions to get involved in acting or anything like that, or music, but I did at school with a friend of mine. We set up a sort of like a stage in the garden for the kids, and we used to put on these little shows for the kids after school. We used to charge them 6pence each, so there was something there all along, so since I was a young kid. And then I met someone when I was up in London during the 60s, sort of sleeping on couches and looning around. I met someone who worked at BBC who got me a job on Adam's Adamant as a sort of like an extra. So I went along there, and these guys, I was asked what agent I was from. So I didn't know anything about agents. I said, well, what agent are you from? And they told me what agents they were with. So the next day I was ringing up the agents. So I got with all the agents that were going at the time. And then sort of got into it. But then I was playing music as well. I tried to sort of play. Well, I'm a bass guitarist. Not a very good one, but I'm a bass guitarist. and so I tried that as well. I recorded Phil Collins when I was in 1970 when I wrote a song, and I took it to a publisher, and he said, "Can you get any musicians to do a demo on this?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I'll ring around." And I rang this guy, and a friend of mine, and he put me on to Phil Collins. I only knew him as Phil, and I went round his house and we rehearsed it. So I was ringing him up to try and fit a date for us to go into the studio. And at the time, he had just joined Genesis, but he was actually rehearsing with them. They hadn't been out on the road, so I kept ringing up, and I was talking to all the members of Genesis. So can I speak to Phil, please? And he'd come on the line. We eventually sort of made a date, and we went down to the studio in Denmark Street and recorded this song called "I Chose the World." And then at the end of the day, I took him and his bass guitarist that he was with, that he was friends with at the time. They were both together in a group called the Flaming Youth. Took them out for sausage, egg and chips at the end of the night. So that's quite a. I don't think many people have taken Phil Collins out for sausage, egg and chips.
Right.
so anyway, but by then I'm getting more into sort of like doing the film work. So because film work is quite well paid, you know, doing the background work. I mean, and you get quite often got a line thrown at you to do, because in those days people had to belong to the union to do the work. So therefore you had people that were more professional minded, you know, so they could handle lines and things and doing a bit of action. And by the time you know I did Star Wars, I was kind of like well accustomed to the way it all works, you know, all the phraseology, like turn the cameras over, cut, and let's go again, and opening positions, you know. So knew it all. So that's how it worked for me. And as I say, the money was quite good. So, you know, you kind of, although I really wanted to do music, I kind of forsook it for the sake of doing, you know, because the work was always there with film work. It was always coming in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and I was having the whale of a time going out every night, and you didn't have to. The thing is, when you're doing that kind of work, you're not working every day, so it's not like a job. You know, you may work every day for a week, and then have the next 3 or 4 days off, and then work 3 days, and the money was kind of like twice as much, virtually twice as much as what a tradesman would get today. So, you know, so it's well paid. So you kind of get sucked into it.
Absolutely. So, how did you get involved with the original Star Wars film? What was that process like?
Well, a lot of the guys were went along for fittings. They were told to go along for fittings, but I was a last minute replacement for a guy called Peter Jukes. I don't think he's alive now, but he couldn't make it. He probably thought, well, I don't want to go. You know, having tried the costume on, because it was quite claustrophobic putting those helmets on. So having tried the costumes on, I thought, well, maybe he thought that I've got something better, you know. So they rang me up at the last minute. So the agent rang me up, said, "Can you go? What's your measurements?" I said, "Well, yes, I'm 5'9". You know, the chest measurements, waist measurements. They said, "Well, you go along and replace Peter Jukes. You have the same measurements." So I went along to the studios, working on a film called Star Wars. They didn't know anything about it. So when I got there and I was grabbing this costume to people, you know, put the costume on, I thought, oh, I know why he didn't turn up now. So so that's how it was. And it was a hot summer as well. And though it was early on in the summer, it was really hot. And every given moment we got, you know, we would take the tops off and sort of like sunbathe outside. And so there'd be the troopers and the rebel troopers, and they were actually called something else to begin with. There's Imperial Guards, I think, but the rebel troopers outside and the Stormtroopers. There was sort of about 20 of us on a patch of grass, and we were sunbathing there. And then the assistant would come out and say, "Right, I need 4 of you for the next shot." So you'll turn your heads away thinking, I'd rather be stuck in the sun than in the studio with all the heat going on, and you know. So and no one volunteered. He said, "Right, I'll have you, and you." So yeah, you couldn't get out of it. So anyway, so that's how it was, and it was a good, enjoyable film to work on, though. You didn't know where it was going, because you 1 minute you got the American guys in there. You didn't know who they were. I mean, you knew that we knew who's was Alec Guinness was, obviously, you know, but I didn't know who Mark Hamill was or Harrison Ford. I mean, so you didn't really know where it was going to fit in, really, because it seemed to be a bit kind of like a children's program, you know, sort of Lost in Space or something, you know.
Nice. So it was very hot. There was no air condition at the studio.
They didn't have it those days. No, they probably have it now, because it's more, you know, in those, it would have made a noise, wouldn't it, to have those fans working or whatever.
That's true.
So so they can't have that. So and they had those big arc lights as well. They've got different lights these days. They don't have the arc lights, which actually the arc lights actually, give out flame. They touch, and burn. So yeah, so it was quite uncomfortable.
So
but you when they say right, you're back tomorrow, you say okay. Although you think, well, I wish something else had come along. You still go back because it's you get into a little bit of a system. So whatever. Anyway.
Wow. So it was almost something of an accident then that you actually ended up in this huge franchise.
Yes. And then what happened when I went into the Cantina sequence again? One of the girl, I think it was a girl. I was told it was going to be a girl. She couldn't appear because she was sick or something. And they said, if you can fit into the costume, you can come back next week. So I went along and to the costume department, and I put the top on, but it didn't close properly. But it actually fitted on the top, but it didn't zip up, was it? So the lapels didn't. Mm-hmm. And they gave me these baggy trousers and everything for the bottom part. I said, well, they don't fit, thinking I won't get the job. And they said, oh, well, that won't matter. That won't notice. As long as you get the top part on, it's okay. So I came back. But if you look at the pictures, it's all baggy. It's like I've got a big fat stomach, but it's all kind of like loose material, sort of tucked into the trousers, which were very baggy.
How funny. Were you interested in having a role in The Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi?
When looking back on it now, yes. but at the time, you think to yourself, well, it didn't really matter, because no one really knew where this was going, in what direction. I don't think even George Lucas knew. But the thing was that since the internet has created this phenomenal following with it, it's because you think to yourself, well, wish I'd done more on it now, because it's amazing the following it gets through the internet. I mean, millions of people follow Star Wars.
So when you took on our role, was it mostly through your agent? Is that how you would have been aware of the other Star Wars films?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not personal management. The agencies we were using weren't kind of like personal management. You don't go along for a sort of basically you're doing. You see, at the time there were two unions. One was called the FAA, which is the Film Artists Association, and Equity. Now, if you're a member of Equity, you're kind of like, which I was also. You go up for the parts, you go up for the individual parts. But if you're, but the FAA, you just go up sort of like as a background, as groups, group of people. So they want a half a dozen Viking guys for a film, Viking-looking guys. You know what I mean, with beards and everything like that.
Sure.
And look at the photographs, and they ring up. Sometimes you audition. Obviously, I remember auditioning for Ken Russell for what was that the name of that film? Can't remember the name of one. Oh God, can't remember it now. But there are a lot of us, but you go in sort of like 3 or 4 at a time, saying, right, I'll have him and him, and I'll have that one and that one, So sometimes there is a bit of an audition, but quite often you just go along for the fitting. And as long as you get into the clothes and everything like that, you actually get the job.
I see. So the agency that you are part of, they didn't say, when the other films rolled around, they didn't say, well, hey, Laurie, you were in the original Star Wars film. Would you like a part in The Empire Strikes Back?
Not unless you were very friendly with them. If you give them Christmas presents, I suppose. But no, it didn't really work like that. Though some of the guys that did the stand-ins, they had people that the main actors, people like Michael Caine, would have a regular stand-in. And the stand-ins would work for the same union. So a lot of the guys did that. They worked for various busy actors. And you know what a stand-in is. It's someone that, well, I'll just explain for the audience. It's someone that stands in to so they can set the camera and the lights up on the artist, and then the artist does the scene, and then the artist or the actor leaves the set and they set up another shot, so you get the standing going through the motions of what's to be filmed, and then the actor comes back again and does the scene. That's what a stand-in is.
Wow. All right, so Laurie, before we discuss the specific characters you played in the film, I'd like to play a little game if you're cool with it. It's called 10 Questions Too Many. And basically, I have 10 random questions for you, and you don't know what they are.
No, I don't. I'm getting too old.
Are you ready?
Even if I know them, I won't be able to remember them. Go on.
All right, number 1. Donuts or muffins?
Muffins. Used to be donuts, but now it's muffins.
Nice. I could go for a nice blueberry muffin right now myself.
I've just had blueberries.
Number 2, Rebel Alliance or Empire?
Rebel Alliance or Empire? Empire.
Nice. Number 3, name the last book that you read.
The last book? I've never read a book.
Nice.
In actual fact, I did read a book. It was about Hell's Angels, and because I thought to myself, I've never read a book all the way through, and this one I was determined to read, and it was many years ago. It's 1969, and I got to the last 2 pages, and I was on the sleepover train coming down from Paris down to Cannes for the Cannes Film Festival, and I had 2 pages to finish, and I left it on the train.
So, number 4, what is your favorite film?
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Nice, good choice. Number 5, who's your favorite musician or band?
Well, I like the songs, really. It's the songs that I like. It's not actually the band. I mean, that one that Charlie Puth did, you know, there's Marvin Gaye. What's that called? There's Marvin Gaye and Get It On. Do you know that one?
I know Marvin Gaye, and I know Let's Get It On. Yes, I'm not sure what.
No. The one Charlie Puth. Charlie Puth did it with Helen Trainer. Is it Trainer? Did a duo. Not so long ago.
I'll have to look that one up.
It's Marvin Gaye and Get It On. I think it's cool.
Interesting.
See, I like that. I rather like, you know, the actual individual songs rather than the artist.
Okay. All right. So number 6, who shot first?
You did.
I did. I'll take that. Number 7, fill in the blank. I wish I could get rid of blank.
My girlfriend.
I hope she's not listening.
Oh God, she must be old.
Number 8, do you believe in aliens?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. I'll tell you why. Can I tell you why?
Sure.
Well, because you see, everyone says the human brain is about beginning and end. You know, I mean, we all want to sort of die and think, oh, we're going to go on forever. But there's no where were we before? There's none of that, you see. And so they don't think of where we were before. But everything else has where did it come from? But not the human, not now our spirit. Where did our spirit come from? So it's where did everything go? Where did space come from? So they're looking for it, and they've said, oh, is it as big as a pea? And then it exploded and created the universe. Well, they're looking in the wrong direction, you see, because if you went on into space and you were traveling indefinitely, you know, you can't tell people if you're going sort of like 1 billion miles an hour, but you can start saying, what if you went 7,000 miles an hour and you're in space on a spaceship and you're traveling at 6 months? Where do you think you'll end up? You think, well, you'll still be traveling in space. All right, where you'd be going if you're going 100,000 miles an hour for 6 months? You'll still be in space. Where would you be going if you traveled at 1,000 miles an hour and you lived for 500 years? Where would you be going? You'll still be traveling in space. So the thing is that there's no ending. And like any equation, if there's no ending, there was no beginning.
Interesting. I happen to actually believe in them myself, and I'll just tell you real quick. I'll have to send you the link, but I have a little video where I actually caught a some sort of a flying object on film. It was interesting.
Yeah, I've seen one with a DJ called Mike Quinn. We were driving the train, driving along in the train. We're driving along, and the two kind of star objects were flying, kind of to our left, and they were flying kind of very slow, but more or less together, and then they suddenly shot away. And I said, that can't be real. I said, what's that? And he said, yeah, I don't know. So I've got it actually somewhere. I think I've got it on tape somewhere. I did take a bit of a tape of it.
Interesting. So number 9, do you believe in trolls that live under bridges in parks?
No. Only the homeless.
And finally, number 10, finish this sentence. A stormtrooper walks into a control room, bangs his head, and suddenly...
No one says cut.
Perfect. So, Laurie, you play 3 different characters in A New Hope, and you said maybe even 4. So firstly, you're a stormtrooper. As far as I can tell, you were both on the Rebel blockade runner at the beginning of Star Wars, and also on the Death Star later on, obviously, in the moment where you hit your head.
Yeah.
You are also one of the aliens in the Mos Eisley Cantina.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I'm saying his name correctly. Maybe you can correct me since it's your character. But is it Hrchek Kal Fas?
Yeah, Kal Fas, yeah. I've been told that, but the actual species are called Saurin. So as that's easier to write and easier to say, I say Saurin.
Nice. And Soren, those species are very similar to Bosk. Are you familiar with Bosk the Bounty Hunter in The Empire Strikes Back?
Yeah, that's Alan Harris did Bosk. Yeah.
Wow.
Alan Harris. It's the same head, but the actual the body's costume is different. That's all.
It's different. And I think the eyes look a little bit different too, don't they?
I haven't really scrutinized it, but I was told it was the same head.
It probably is. It's probably the same head. And you were also a Rebel pilot during the Rebel briefing scene on Yavin 4.
Yeah, well, what happened there? I think there were too many of us in the studio. I can't remember whether it was Shepperton or actually in Elstree. There were so many of us in there. They told a lot of us to get out, and I thought I was in shot, but I wasn't. I can't see myself in shot, so I don't sign as that because I haven't got any kind of pictures of me, you know. So I always tell people that when they they want me to sign a shot of that. I say, well, I'm not sure whether I'm in that shot or actually partook in the filming, because. But I did at one day dress up as went along and dressed up as an X-wing pilot.
Nice. So how common was it back in those days for extras to be given multiple roles?
Well, in '76, there was a lot of work for some reason. I did a job on in something called The Life and Times of Will Shakespeare, or The Life of Will Shakespeare, starring Tim Curry, and I got a role as one of the characters in there called Sir Gilly Merrick, and it was a speaking role, and I didn't even have to audition for it because they was just so short of people, so it was quite easy, and a lot of the crew actually took part in Star Wars. I think Ted Weston is one. I think he was a crew member. I can't be sure about that, but I think so, because there just wasn't enough people, because the work suddenly came in. There was a volume of work, you know, so they were desperate for anybody, really.
Wow. So you basically covered everything with these roles. You're an Imperial Stormtrooper, you're a Rebel Trooper, and an alien. I find that quite fascinating.
Yeah.
So when you were in the cantina, when you were in your Soren costume, what goes through your mind? You're in this costume, it's very hot, and everywhere you look, there's all these different characters and aliens and people running around. What do you think in your mind?
Well, you go along, and I think when Pam Rose went along, she had to get there quite early because the makeup was quite heavy. So I wouldn't have fancied that. But so when Pam went along, yeah, the makeup was quite heavy for her, so she had to get in there really, really early. But I used to get there, I think about 8 o'clock, 8:30, something like that, and get dressed and get under set, and then do whatever shot you're involved in, rehearse it, and then record it. And you really don't think about, what the difficulties. You just get on with it. But there was a problem with the helmet, with the costume, with the helmets, because you couldn't, with soaring, for instance, you had to look and breathe out the mouth. You couldn't look out the eyes. You had to. So as soon as they said cut, you took the helmet off to get some fresh air. So it was awkward, but at the same time, you still came back the next day. It's because what happened, lunchtime, you go down to the bar, because in those days, I used to down a few drinks. And so we'd go along with a few of us go down to the bar and drink. So it's kind of like social as well as being, work. Because so you came back after the bar, after lunch, and get back into doing work again. And also you have times, if you're not involved in the shot, you can sit in the corner with a friend or two and just have a chat. So it's quite easy, really. I mean, you're not in that costume all the time, or you're not in the helmet all the time. So people tend to think that once you've got the helmet on, you're in there you've got that helmet on until lunchtime and then the rest of the day. But it's not like that. You're only in that costume or the helmet, shall I say. You only got the helmet on as and when you're needed.
Sure.
When I did the second role, the soaring role, as I said, I went along and I just managed to fit into the costume, and everyone else had been fitted. So, and the woman that was down to do the role was fitted. But so when I started signing and soaring, someone got hold of a costume list, and because my name wasn't on the list, they started putting it on the internet. I wasn't in the film. Laurie Goode's a liar. He's signed, and then a lot of people kind of thought that because I'm not on the list, that I didn't take part. But that's how it changes in film world. These things happen. They happen. The shots have changed because of rain or whatever it is. So it's just got a bit annoying, really, that someone doesn't understand. That things change around. So
sure.
I'm not bothered about it, but it's still on the internet. If you look it up, Laurie Goode did not play soaring. Not now. You can if you want.
Oh yeah, I see that.
Yeah, but since then, the shots that stills come up with me and Pam Rose and Chris Bunn sort of come resting on in the set on a bench in the cantina between shots. So stick 2 fingers up to that or 1 finger up to that person who wrote that.
Yes, I saw that. That's the one where Pam's knitting.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, great photo.
Yeah. But as I say, we went down the pub, lunchtime. So it was in the afternoon because I'm falling asleep on Chris's shoulder. So I come back and had a few drinks, and I'm falling asleep.
So of the 3 roles that you played, which would you say was your favorite?
Well, looking back on it, I think the Stormtrooper was quite funny, really. Because, although again it was claustrophobic, it was easy to take the helmet off, just whip it off. When I say claustrophobic, it wasn't as claustrophobic as soaring, but it was still sort of uncomfortable. I mean, the guys now that do the cosplay, at the conventions, they dress up as Stormtroopers. I mean, they really got nice fitting helmets. I've tried them on, they got sort of sponges inside and things like that. But these helmets we had, they weren't anything like that. They weren't as comfortable as what you get today. And also the bits and pieces were dropping off as you ran along. If you had to do any running, you bet your life at sort of like a belt would fall off or a bit of plastic would fall off. So the costume people were kept really busy, sort of like with pins and stuff, and to put you all back together again. So they're quite impractical. Yeah. But I mean, it's just fantasy. So, the kids love it.
Absolutely. So speaking of the Stormtrooper, Laurie, one of the things you seem to be the most famous for was that you say you were the Stormtrooper who banged his head on the door in the control room where C-3PO and R2-D2 were hiding. So can you give us a little bit of insight onto how this blooper occurred?
Yes. Well, I came in, I think it was like the second or third day, and I had an upset stomach. I developed an upset stomach, and I kept going to the loo. So I was taking. I went back on the set, probably the third time I've been to the loo, and Jerry, the assistant, put me in shot. I said, I think I'm going to go to the loo again, Jerry. So he said, oh, you just do this shot. Just do this shot. So we were doing a shot, and we were carrying the guns in our right hands as we did the shot. So they did 3 or 4 takes carrying the guns in their right hands. And I thought, I'm going to go. And they said, no. They said, and I thought they got it. I said, well, that's it. I said, no, wait a minute. You've got to put the guns in your left hand. So we did a shot of holding the guns in our left hand. And by now, I'm really got a bad stomach. And I gone, bang, I hit my head because I'm not concentrating. and I came round. And then they said, cut, right, that's it. And I thought, well, no one said cut, who's that banged his head? So I thought, well, they must use one of the other shots. And then when it came out and that shot was in it, the shot with me banging my head, I think it's because they only did one shot of us holding the guns in their left hands, because all the holsters are in the left hand side. I mean, the modern films now, I think they got them in the right hands, but in those days, back then, the first 3 films, every Stormtrooper held the gun in their left hands. So I think it's because they only had the one shot and they had to use it, because you can't not notice me banging my head.
Sure.
I mean, maybe you didn't see it on the day, when it happened, but when you're looking back at the filming, you think, well, the guy's banged his head. So, and I said to a friend of mine, Mark Kirby, at lunchtime again in the bar, I said, I hit my head and we didn't go again, but it's just as we moved the guns to our left hands. So I don't understand that, So that I always remembered that. But this other guy's come up now. There's Michael Leader used to say that he was the one who banged his head, but I couldn't say to him, well, it isn't you, it's me, because I had no definite proof it was me. I got my friends to say, they would back me up, but unless sort of something happened on the set where you got told off by George Lucas and you had loads of witnesses, you can't really say it's you. So I was criticising him. For saying that he's the one who banged his head, because how does he know? But then I can't say that I'm the one who banged my head. But I believe it is me. I believe it is me, but I can't prove it. And I always tell people that I can't prove it. I got friends. I got Chris Bunn I was with on the day, and he knows I was there, and because he was one that's also in the shot. And there's also Mark Kirby, who I told about it, who was a rebel trooper at lunchtime. So is that sufficient proof? I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you what would be proof. If I said to George Lucas, the only reason you used that film is because you only had the only one, and if he said yes, I'd be the man. I'd say, yep, it was me. I banged the head.
Well, maybe you'll get that opportunity sometime.
But there's another guy now who said it's him. His name's Martin Reed, and he said, well, when I banged my head, he said everyone laughed. Well, if you laugh, you know it's happened. You would have got, the director would have gone again, Mm-hmm. So, but he's saying it's him who's banged his head. But I think you can't. No one can really prove it unless. And the only way I can prove it is if George, as I said, if I said to George Lucas, you only had the one shot to use, didn't you? And he said, yeah.
Absolutely. So when you hit your head, did it hurt?
No. I kind of stopped walking. I mean, if you look at the shot, it's a sort of like stutter for a second or two, and I just sort of slid underneath it. But I was more concerned that I may cause an accident with my stomach. So so if your mind's on something else, then it tends to sort of be a secondary issue rather than the major issue.
Sure. So headbanging in Star Wars seems to be a bit common, doesn't it? Billy D. Williams hit his head in Return of the Jedi, and you can see that. And then in tribute to the Stormtrooper, George Lucas showed Jango Fett hitting his head in Attack of the Clones, one of the prequels. And he did that since the Stormtroopers at the time were supposedly clones of Jango Fett. Were you aware about that?
No. Well, maybe sort of like me banging my head started the whole thing off. Maybe it became a trend.
Absolutely. And from what I recall from interviews at the time, Lucas actually said that he did that intentionally because of the Stormtrooper.
Really? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, how do I get to meet George Lucas? Do you know him?
I wish I did. So, Laurie, you are in an upcoming documentary made by Jamie Sangrum, who I spoke with on the podcast a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And the documentary is called The Empire Strikes Door, and it's about his quest to determine who it was, in fact, who hit their head in that scene. So Jamie hasn't yet revealed his findings, at least to those of us who aren't involved in the documentary, who he believes is the person who in fact hit their head. So I don't want you to give anything away, but I would like to ask you what that process appearing in the documentary.
I don't know when we started, about 2 years ago, I think. And we started off, we went on these, do you know what bumper cars are at the fairground?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, we started off doing it on the bumper cars. I suppose the thing is the bump of the head, bump in the head, you know, so it's kind of, so I don't know what he's got in as a kind of in his head where it starts from, where it finishes, but it's been added to as we've gone along. You know, the whole idea of doing the polygraph test came quite recently. Well, you know, it was the last bit of filming I was involved in, so that was sort of 10 months ago about. But then we did some filming in Madame Tussauds, and we did some filming. Where else was it? Did some filming. I think did some filming at the BBC, because he works at the BBC, so he had facilities to use there. I mean, it's a fun thing for him.
Gotcha. So, Laurie, can you tell us a little bit about other films you have had roles in?
Yeah, well, I've done a lot of stuff. BBC, I've done Doctor Who. I did a lot of Doctor Who. And there was one particular episode I did called Warrior's Gate, where we were dressed up as lions, and we had faces. It took a day to work out the fitting, because you went along and had latex put on your face, and they took the latex off and then made a mold of your face. Then from the mold they made the makeup of the lion's face to fit on. And there was one guy there, he put the latex on, you put straws up your nose so you could breathe, and he after because you've got to wait until it's set, you see, and after sort of like 30 minutes or so, he said, take it off, I can't stand it, I can't stand it. So I didn't take it off, so he couldn't do the job. So all these things always get thrown at you, you know. It's these you never know what to expect. I suppose that's the fascination of the job, really, because you never know where, you know, you could be in a really cold environment, or somewhere out in some kind of gravel pit or some field in the winter, you know, where there's hardly any doing a shot, and you think, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? And then the next time you could be sort of like doing a shot in a bar where they're giving you free beer. So it can vary quite a lot, and it can be quite fun. Sure.
And I also see here that you had a role in An American Werewolf in London.
Oh yeah. I was in the hospital. I was a hospital porter, and there's a shot of me with Jenny Agutter. It's on. I think you find that on eBay, and it filmed at a hospital in Putney called Putney Hospital for Women. It's now closed, been pulled down, I think. And also we worked on Piccadilly Circus, where the werewolf comes out the cinema, and John Landis, who was the American director, had all these cars crashing sort of like 2 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So or Saturday morning, no, it'd be Sunday morning. So and he actually jumped in on top of a bonnet of a car and was a bit of a stuntman himself on that one. The next morning I was working again. I was working on a commercial, a beer commercial, which was round the corner. So I went to work on Sunday night and I didn't finish until Monday evening at 8 o'clock. So I was on 2 different jobs. But that's how it used to be. You know, you normally find with film work, the people at the top are the easiest to get on with. If I can add this, there's a little story here. I remember I worked with Alec Guinness before on something called 12th Night at ATV back up in Elstree again. And this was like 1968, 69, something like that, 69 perhaps. And there was the main stars was Ralph Richardson and Tommy Steele and Alec Guinness and someone else called Joan Plowright, who was Sir Laurence Olivier's wife. So they were on this film and they were rehearsing, and with a lot of other people rehearsing, and they were rehearsing in a church hall on this occasion, and I had to get across London, and I'd been out the night before, and I woke up, I had to be there at 8, and it was 8 o'clock when I woke up, so I drove like mad to get over there, probably still a bit drunk. And as I walked in, and the director looked at me and said, "Oh, you're always late." And I don't know why he said that, because that was the first day I ever worked for him. But anyway, so I sheepishly made my way over to the corner, and there's this guy there making a cup of tea. And as he turned round, he said to me, "Would you like a cup of tea?" And it was Sir Alec Guinness. And I said, "Yes, please." He said, "Sugar or no sugar?" I said, "Oh, wow. No sugar, please." But he was a really nice guy, you know, because then we had a little chat together. But the majority of these people at the top, the most easiest people to get on with.
Wow, that's interesting. So it's my understanding that you are on the convention circuit these days. So what has it been like interacting with so many Star Wars fans?
Oh, I like the people. I like the fans and the collectors and all that, because they're really kind of, you know, they really like to know all the interesting stuff, and it becomes interesting when you're talking to them, because it's amazing what they tell you and find out. I mean, this guy came up to me, as I said, with this book. And I saw 2 photographs of me in there, and I didn't know it existed, you know. But I mean, it's all great fun, really. I've got a lot of time for them.
Absolutely, awesome. That's great. So, Laurie, if you had the opportunity to play another role in a Star Wars movie, would you do it?
Yeah, my age. Well, in actual fact, I did actually send my stuff off. To try and get on Force Awakens. I thought it'd be nice to get on that, you know, because now I'm doing the conventions. I thought it'd be probably quite easy. So I went on IMDb, found out who the agent was, and sent off my photograph and said, "I worked on the original," and blah blah blah. I heard nothing. I heard nothing. Huh. But Salo Gardner, who you ought to really, or you really should interview. Salo Gardner was on there, and A.J. Abrahams said, "I want a round of applause for Salo Gardner, who worked on the first Star Wars film." And everyone gave me a round of applause. And Salo must be 80 now, or that way anyway. Skinny guy, doesn't say much, but always popping up here and there and everywhere.
Wasn't he also in the Cantina?
I think he was, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So, yeah, if anybody from Lucasfilm is listening, right now filming for Star Wars Episode 9 is going on, perhaps they can give you a call.
They can, yeah. Where do I have to fly to?
I think they're filming at Pinewood currently.
Are they?
Mm-hmm.
God, I don't know what's going on these days. Yeah, I'll do it, yeah. Put me down. I'll share a dressing room as well with the girls. That's basically incorrect answer.
So, Laurie, finally, since one of the main things I do here at Victoria's Cantina is review action figures and toys, I have to ask, do you have an action figure of Sora, the Cantina alien?
No, I can't find one anywhere. Can you find one?
I have one. I own one. I have a little Cantina diorama on my shelf with all the different alien figures, and yes, he is in there.
Where can you tell me where I can buy one?
I wish I knew. They actually came back out. They came out in 2010, I believe, 2009, 2010. And back then they were just regular price. I believe was about $8 US, and now if you look on eBay, they're probably around $75.
Are they? Oh, you made some money then.
They did. They're worth quite a bit at this point in time.
You've made some money, because if you bought one for $7, they were worth $70.
Right. Well, I wouldn't sell it, but
No. But I'm saying this. That's your funeral money.
Oh, I don't want to think about that.
Well, you do it my age. By the time you're my age, it could be worth £7,000, $7,000. You never know.
Sure. So, Laurie, is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners?
Come along and see me at Llandudno on the 1st of September. I'm doing a convention there. And also, download my song, Who Was a Stormtrooper Banged His Head, on iTunes.
Nice. So on top of everything else, you're a musician as well.
Yeah. I've written a lot of songs. Listen. Who was the stormtrooper who banged his head? So many claims unsubstantiated. Who was the stormtrooper who bashed his brains? Nobody knows, the mystery remains.
Nice. Didn't think we were going to get serenaded here on the podcast.
Hey, no, we can have it if you want to, but...
Awesome. Well, hey, Laurie, you've been a delightful guest. If our listeners would like to learn more about you or follow you on social media, where can they go online?
If you go on Sci-Fi Signers, I've got a photo gallery there which I autograph and send off if you want to buy one. If you just type in www.Sci-Fi Signers Laurie Goode, you'll go straight to the page. That's it, really. I mean, you can contact me through Twitter or Facebook. I'm on Facebook, Twitter. So if anyone wants to contact me. And I'm open for any conventions, if there's anybody out there. But you've got to play my song.
And on Twitter, it's at Laurie Goode, correct?
At Laurie Goode, yeah.
Okay, great. I'll put links to these different sites down in the show notes. Laurie, once again, thank you so much for hanging out with me today in the cantina.
Can I have a cup of tea now?
Of course.
Victoria, I'm going to say something really American to you.
Okay.
Have a nice day.
Thank you, Laurie. You have a nice day as well.
Oh, thank you.
Take care.
Ciao.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for this episode of the Cantina Chatter Podcast. Once again, I'd like to thank Laurie Goode for coming onto the podcast to talk about his experiences filming his roles in the original Star Wars film, A New Hope. It's always great chatting with the people who made these films come to life. I've said it before, but Star Wars is the sum of its parts, and it takes countless people, whether they are in the forefront of the film, in the background, or behind the scenes, to make it all happen. I truly hope you've enjoyed this conversation, and if you have, please do us a solid by leaving a 5-star review on iTunes to increase the visibility of the show. This podcast is a one-woman show, and we appreciate your reviews and your sharing of the show with your friends, family, and followers. If you're so inclined, Victoria's Cantina has a Patreon page in which you can gain greater access to the Cantina for as little as $1 a month. Be sure to follow Victoria's Cantina on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. As always, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the Cantina Chatter Podcast. Until next time, bye-bye.